Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is tiger tails, their storied past and uncertain future. And it will be presented by our fabulous NatHab expedition leader, Surya Ramachandran. Surya, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to dive in. Let's go.
Thank you so much, Sunny. Hello, everyone. Um, so this is a conversation which we have had at this webinar. I think it was 2 years ago. But then, in the light of all the new information that we have on tigers and a couple of new censuses that have been happening in India, I was thinking that it'd be a good time to jog that memory and add in the new information. So my webcam isn't working where I am at the moment, so it's not working too well. So I've turned it off. So that's me. For those who want to know how I look, I'm sure it's not important. Okay, before we talk about tigers now, I wanted to show you this particular illustration. So this is a map of all the subspecies of tigers in the world. So all the tigers in the world are basically one species, and this is all the subspecies. And amongst this, the ones in the gray, that is the Caspian tiger, Javan tiger, and the Balinese tiger, are considered to be extinct. The South China tiger is also actually extinct, but it is there as populations in captivity. But amongst all these subspecies, we will be focusing on the Bengal tiger today. The Bengal tiger is the tiger which is found across India and parts of Burma. So when I look at this map, so this map shows the Indian subcontinent. You generally wonder, where do you think tigers are found in this large part of India? I mean, are they found in like the south or the east or in the north, the center? Where are they found? The actual truth is, tigers are found across India, all across, and you'll be surprised to see where all. So tigers generally require like dense forests, rocky outcrops, caves, lots of prey. That is the assumption, right? So that is where we first go. So we see tigers in our Himalayan foothill forests, in our central Indian forests, lots of trees, woodland where their stripes help them blend in and hunt. Tigers are also found interestingly in rainforests. Rainforests are basically wet evergreen forests with not much sunlight reaching the forest floor. We have a lot of rainforests in India, and in these places, you generally look for smaller mammals, but tigers are surviving here in great numbers, which is a fantastic, interesting, and information about the tiger. They are also found in wetlands. Like when I say wetlands, I'm talking about uh, boggy marshes. These are places where the rivers slow down when they come down from the Himalayas, and they widen, forming these huge marshes, which is home to the one-horned rhinoceros, like Kaziranga. And here also we have some of the highest densities of tigers. And surprise, surprise, this habitat that you're seeing in this picture with the tigress and her cub is along the coastline. These are the mangrove forests where salt water flows through, and there is wet tidal forest. So this you can see this picture is shot in low tide, but the tide actually goes up till the trees, and that's why this is a very good mangrove forest. And from the outside, it looks like nothing can survive here. There's no fresh water, but tigers have adapted here, drinking salt water, feeding on fish, turtles. So it's incredible where all they're found. And if you think that's the last, look at this. Tigers are also found up to 13,000 feet up in the high Himalayas. From Bhutan to northern India, tigers are found kind of figured out ways to occupy all these niches. This is a very interesting news that came out in 2016 about a tiger being camera trapped at 12,000 feet. But recently, last month, there was a tiger who was camel trapped in India at 13,200 feet, from sea level to 13,200 feet. That's like as incredible as you can imagine. And this is a huge cat. It's not like a leopard or a small cat which can adapt and hide and blend in. This is a big cat, and it's managing to walk all these places and kind of adapt itself to survive in such extreme conditions. So what is it that the tiger needs? What is it that the tiger actually requires? How is it able to survive in all these places? The general assumption, the scientific number that is actually put to it is 50 large deer-sized prey is what a tiger requires in a year to survive. This is an adult tiger requires 50 large deer-sized prey. In this picture, sorry about the graphic detail, is a tiger hunting a sambar in Ranthambore National Park, which is where NatHab goes for its summer tiger photography trips. But at the same time, tigers have been known to survive, like I said earlier, on fish, on monkeys, on rodents, anything they can get their hands on to survive, depending on the habitat. But it is not just this extreme. Tigers also have been recorded going after rhinos, elephants, large gaur, which are like the largest bovine in the world. A gaur male can weigh about a ton, and tigers go after them alone. And so this is the kind of spectrum of prey that the tiger feeds on. So prey is very important, but also important is the habitat quality. Both of these factors together determine whether a tiger can be found in an area. And not just whether a tiger can be found in an area, but it also determines whether a tiger, uh, what the tiger numbers are in an area. So for example, we talk about territories and sizes. So when we say territories, tigers don't build fences around their boundaries. How do they do this? And so you can see in this picture a huge male tiger to the right and a female to the left. You can actually appreciate the size difference between the two. So tigers regularly mark their territories using scent, primarily scent, by spraying on trees, by rubbing themselves on trees, scraping the ground, scratching trees. So they have glands which spread their scent, and this scent is so strong that other tigers are able to read it and know what they're getting into when they're walking into a forest patch. So this is how tigers mark their territories, and this is very, very important. And for another tiger who's coming into an area, they're able to sense this very fine. It's actually the smell of a tiger's spray. I've smelt it once, and it smells like cooked rice, like cooked plain rice. That's kind of how it smells, but it's a very mild smell. But other tigers are able to get it because their senses are so strong. And also, they have this very interesting organ called the Jacobson's organ, something very similar to what a snake has. And the snake keeps putting out its tongue to sense the atmosphere. Similarly, a tiger does the same thing where it has wants to get more information from the surroundings. And it looks like it's making a funny face. But actually, what the tiger is doing is it's called a phlegm response, where it's putting its tongue out and getting more information into the Jacobson's organ. So they have very, very acute senses, and that is how they're able to determine the territories and determine a lot of things. Uh, One very interesting cartoon done by my very dear friend Rohan from Green Humor, it kind of summarizes how tiger scent marking and social networking works. I'll just give you like a few seconds to go through this. So their sense of smell, they're able to find a rival male and how they challenge, and if they find a female in heat, how do they respond? This is kind of how the tiger's world works, which kind of brings us to the very interesting thought that tigers are solitary, but they're not alone. Every tiger knows what every other tiger in the jungle is up to, but even though they don't necessarily have to meet each other. So tigers are solitary, but they're definitely not alone. So another very, very interesting thing about tigers is they have almost 8 to 9 different kinds of vocalizations. A lot of it is not even audible for our ears, but these sounds carry over miles in the jungle, and tigers are able to communicate with each other or even know the presence of each other through these sounds. In the past, I've tried to play videos on these webinars, and they haven't really played well, simply because there's a lot of lag when it comes to that. So at some point, if you want, just YouTube tiger sounds on YouTube, and there are many videos which tell you all about it. It's not just the roars. There's very small mild sounds, there's purring sounds, there are all kinds of different sounds that tigers make depending on the situation. Females with cubs. So this is the hope for the future. So an adult tigress should always have cubs or is pregnant. So this is kind of usually the life of an adult tigress. All she needs to do is raise as many young as she can to adulthood, feed them, and then find the male again, get pregnant, and repeat the process. Their gestation period is about 3 months. So an adult tigress in her mature life can usually have about three, if not four litters in her life. And we know instances where females have had 5 litters in their life. Usually, the number of cubs varies from three, or sometimes two, but we've also seen four, and like in this picture, 5 cubs. So it's very interesting, very rare to see 5 cubs, but that it's not a great thing to see 5 cubs always, simply because it matters more how many survive to adulthood than just seeing find their tiny cubs. Very rarely do all 5 cubs survive to adulthood because there are so many challenges for a tigress in the jungle. So tigers are, as we all know, very secretive animals. They're jungle animals. They're forest animals. Their stripes help them blend in very well. They use their body patterns to blend into the jungle and hunt prey, move silently to the jungle. So how is it that we on safari are able to go and find tigers using these signs? So when we go into the jungle, we look for tracks, we look for scrape marks, we look for scratch marks. But then we have other friends in the jungle. For example, the deer and the monkeys are always giving warning sounds, or what we call alarm calls, when they see a big cat on the move. And by listening to these, we're able to pinpoint the location of a tiger. And then everything else comes down to knowing that individual tiger, knowing the routes it takes, and then making sure we're there at the right place at the right time. But having said this, in summer, tigers are one of the few cats to cool off in water. One of the few cats in the world which willingly get into water to cool off. So this tigers do in the hot Indian summer in all the parks, where they come to these last remaining water bodies to cool off from the extreme hot sun in the middle of the day. So summers become fantastic times to see tigers, which is why the NATAB does the tiger photography tour in Ranthambore in the summer. But having said this, it is not just the summer where you can see tigers. Tigers are seen through the year, but just that in the summers they are more predictable because they have to come cool off in these last remaining water bodies. So we've understood a little bit about tigers. Obviously, there's a lot more than what I can put together in this 40-minute presentation. But I want to tell you a little bit more about the past and the future and the current situation of tigers in India, especially tiger conservation. So in the past, we know about the great tiger hunts where various British officers accompanied by Indian Maharajas went and hunted tigers for sport. And when I say hunted tigers for sport, some of them had over 150 kills in their time. So this was the dark ages of tigers, where tigers were shot across the spectrum, across India, across Nepal, all over for sport. This continued post independence also. So, this is not something most of you hear. People always blame the British for ruining India's wildlife by overhunting, but the actual hunting and damage happened post independence in 1947. Once the British left, our forests had no control. So, forests were cut down mercilessly across. People were trying to grab land. All animals were shot. So from 1947 to 1972, there was actually no protection for any animals in our country. And in 1972, when conservationists realized what the status was, they brought in Project Tiger, and they created these forest patches which were secure for tigers called tiger reserves. They started with 8 tiger reserves, and now we have 56. In that process is where the study of tigers started. So they started using elephants, the natural ATVs of the jungle, to observe tigers, to film tigers, to study their behavior. Scientists went in and got to know more about these cats. They tried to identify individual tigers. So initially, what they did was they used this pug mark method, which is basically taking a plaster of Paris impression of a tiger's pug, and they believed that each of it was unique to each tiger. Obviously, there was a science to it, but it wasn't executed very well by our poor forest guards. So this number was always skewed until a new method was brought in by an Indian scientist, where he realized that every tiger has a unique stripe pattern. And by using camera traps and photographing the tigers from either side as it walks past a camera trap, you can positively identify individuals. And nowadays, they even have an app where you can put in these photos and the app tells you which tiger it is. And it's been a great way to accurately study tiger numbers across parks. And camera traps didn't just speak about tigers and tiger individuals, but they also showed us secrets which most of us didn't know for the longest time. In India, as you can see in the top two pictures, we have black tigers, that is melanistic tigers, tigers which have excessive black in their body. They are far darker, and there are about 16 individuals in a forest in eastern India. At the same time, there's also pale tigers. This is actually this the two pale tigers below are shot near my house, photographed near my house in southern India. So it's very interesting what camera traps reveal. And stripe patterns have been the key to, it's like our fingerprint, to understanding tiger numbers and their movements. Look, for example, if you camera trap a tiger in one place and another camera trap catches the same tiger almost 40 miles away, then you know that there is an interesting pattern forming here. That's how camera traps are used. And talking about stripe patterns, just a fun fact, this tiger was one of the most famous tigers in India because on his forehead it said CAT, cat. So he became one of the most popular photographed tigers. He's no more now. He lived up to 16, a big male tiger. But it was very interesting that his forehead had the letters CAT on it, and that made him very, very popular. He was in Kana Tiger Reserve in central India. So then, a lot of you, especially those who are really keen and follow wildlife news from across the world, you would have heard this news. Tiger population rises by 33%. India has crossed 4,000 tigers, a great success from 2,000, 1,500 or less, which was there in the 90s. And then you see all this news and you rejoice. Obviously, the plan has succeeded, everything. But this is the problem. The problem is all these tiger reserves are islands. They're islands which are not connected to each other. And a tigress, remember, gives birth to 3 to 4 cubs every 2 years. And if there are 20 tigresses in a park, that park is going to get full in no time. So tigers are territorial. They will not adjust their territory sizes for more tigers. The excess tigers will have to leave the park. And that is where the problem starts. So we've created all these great islands where tigers can breed and live in peace. But what happens to the excess tigers? What happens when your conservation problem becomes successful? And that creates a new problem. We are not prepared for it as a country. So tigers are prolific breeders. They are going to breed. If you provide them a safe space, they're going to breed. They're going to ensure that they multiply. And what happens when all these 4 cubs, as you see in this picture, become big and they have to leave the mother's territory once they're old enough? She will chase them away, and the park is full. So they leave the park, they kill cattle, they get hit by trucks, they get hit by railway lines. This is where the problem starts. They get poisoned because the farmer's tired of a tiger killing his cattle. So this is the problem. This is the current problem for tiger conservation in India. Not the parks, not poaching, but a problem of space. This is the situation for tigers in India. These excess tigers are moving out to new areas. They're living in farms, fields. They're living around people's backyards. There's conflict. There's death and damage on both sides. So this is the reality of tiger conservation in India now. And this is India. As much as you like to look at India as a green space, it is a country with 1.4 billion people, and there is not that much space left with 1.4 billion people and over 4,000 tigers. So we have to figure out a way to break out of this island model or this fortified model of conservation. When I say fortified, what it means is these tiger reserves are forts where people can't enter, but tigers can go out. You cannot wall these tiger reserves because the tigers will kill each other. So what is the solution to this? And then studies started happening about tigers outside tiger reserves. For the first time in 2000s, they started studying tigers which have left the park. And then came some incredible stories. Some tigers, not all, very few tigers were still being able to walk from park to park. How they know these routes, we have no idea. But they know these routes and they're able to walk through fields, railway lines, highways, villages, towns. And this tigress actually slept in a small hedge amongst a village for the whole day. No one knew she was there except the scientists who were tracking her. And then she got up again at night and walked again. So this tigress actually made it between two parks. And then they started camera trapping on all these corridors, and they realized there are routes which tigers still take and where tigers still make it between parks. So the new idea is to create these corridors or passageways of safety for tigers between parks. But As simple as this sounds, it's not easy in India because in each corridor there'll be at least about a million or 2 million people. What do we do about them? So it is a challenge, but this seems to be the solution apart from manual translocation of individual tigers between parks. So this is a camera trap picture from one of the largest cities in India, and tigers are now all around that city. They're living there, they're hunting cattle. People are seeing them on the way to school. Kids are seeing them in cycles. They're sitting on the roadside. So it's a very new situation which India as a country is not prepared for, sadly, because they never thought their tiger program will be so successful that tigers are now all over the place. This is pretty strange for me to say this, but this is the truth. The program is so successful that we don't know what to do with our tigers. So the truth of the matter is, India has 16% forest land cover. Out of these 16% forests, tigers exist in 1%. Okay, there are still 15% forests with no tigers, and they had tigers in the past. So the reality is, if we are able to augment the prey and manually translocate tigers into these empty forests, you will be able to create new homes for these cats. And that is not just the case. The truth of the matter is, we talk about an increase in tiger numbers from 1,500 to 4,000. But how this increase has happened is in a very skewed manner. For example, almost 30% of tigers' former range, tigers have disappeared, and tiger numbers have doubled and tripled and quadrupled in certain areas. So we've increased the number of tigers while at the same time reducing the area which tigers roamed in India. The next map will show you this. So if you look at this map here, you can see all the blue was where tigers were, and when I say all where the tigers were, this is in 1972 when Project Tiger was brought in, and all the orange on the right side map is where tigers are now. So tigers were there all across the blue, but now the tigers are there only in the orange. But all the rest of the blue are still forests, and we can repopulate them with goodwill and intent, like bringing in wild boar and deer and augmenting populations there, and then bringing in the excess tigers from these parks which exit the park. That is one way we can look at tiger conservation in the coming future. Having said all this, despite having a population of 1.4 billion people, I still believe that we have managed to save a cat from the brink of extinction. So we have done something right as a country. India definitely has done something right. Despite all the criticism, despite all the stress of the population, despite all the stress of poverty, despite all the issues of politics, wars, everything, we have managed to bring the tiger back. Now, what to do with our tigers is the future. So I believe there is going to be a solution someday soon. But until then, we'll have to figure out, and it's a day-to-day battle to make sure the tiger survives and the people also survive. It's very easy to talk about tiger conservation when you're living in big cities far away from tigers. The situation is very different when you have a tiger roaming around your backyard. I'd like to stop here with that statement, and I'd like to hear if you all have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Surya. All of them. One person was curious about the elephants. When the parks were just getting started, and you said the elephants were the ATVs of the jungle. Were the elephants scared of the tigers, or can you talk a little bit about their relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, it's not just the elephants. These are elephants with a mahout on top of them. A mahout is the elephant, as you may call it in simple terms, driver or the trainer of the elephant. So the elephant is trained to listen to the mahout. And in general, the elephants do fine in front of tigers. They walk about. And the tigers also over time get used to the elephants and they don't bother running away or charging at the elephants. Um, Sometimes elephants are very bold. They actually walk up to the tiger and make sure, like I even knew an elephant who used to suck in air so that his body doesn't move, so that the veterinarian on top can shoot without missing the tiger. So it's some incredible stories are there between elephants and tigers, especially these park elephants and tigers. And overall, yes. But having said that, I've also been on an elephant in my early years who ran from a tiger, and I got bruised so badly because it ran through trees and bushes, and I got cut by thorns and scratched by twigs all over because the elephant ran away when the tiger charged. So you have all kinds, but in general, it's a very how do I put it? It's a very placid relationship. It's not
Mm,
anything, not much drama there.
interesting.
Hmm.
Can you compare the size of a Bengal tiger with the Siberian tiger?
Well, I think by Bengal tiger and Siberian tiger, I think Siberian tiger has much more fur. Like I said, they're just subspecies. The size-wise, I think they are very similar. The Siberian tiger looks bigger because it has much more fur because it has to live in such uh, extreme cold conditions. Um, so I'm guessing there'll be a 2 to 3% difference. But having said that, I think from whatever I've seen, the Sumatran tigers are much smaller because of the prey that they eat in those rainforests of Sumatra and Java. They are much smaller than the Bengal tiger or the Siberian tiger.
Mm,
And interestingly, in our Himalayan tigers, the tigers which I showed earlier, which were living at 13,000 feet, 12,000 feet, they are growing pretty large and they also have fur like Siberian tigers. So if you do more studies, they might just be quite similar in size and an overall comparison.
hmm, interesting. Okay. Can you tell us the name of the city where the tiger and the night lights are
Yeah, that's
photo was taken?
Bhopal. The city is called Bhopal, Bhopal, and this city has a tiger reserve a few, I think about 80 miles away, and there is a huge water reservoir at the edge of the city. And for some reason, the tigers have come and settled themselves around this large water reservoir near Bhopal. And
Hmm,
I've seen a tiger there on a regular morning walkers route. It's crazy. I mean, and it sounds amazing, but I'll tell you one the another flip side. Used to be kids who used to cycle and walk to school on a normal route, probably let's say about a less than a mile. Now they're all picked up in buses and going. They can't even get out on the road and play or something, because the fear is there. Not necessarily the tiger is going to come and eat the children, but it is that fear is there. So it changes life as you know it when you have a tiger roaming around like that.
mm. Well, that leads nicely into the next question, which is, can you talk a little bit more about how India is managing the coexistence with the tigers and humans?
Well, India is not really managing it very well. I have to be honest here. uh, well, I'll tell you something very interesting. There is a place in southern India called Wayanad, Wayanad. This place is not a tiger reserve. It's not even an entire forest patch, but it has the highest density of tigers in the world. 84 tigers in 340 square kilometer. That means there's one tiger every square kilometer. That is almost one tiger every 2 square miles is there in that region. And this is a heavily populated area. A lot of coffee plantations, tea plantations. So tigers are able to hide and move around there, and they're hunting only cattle. So what that region has done, and the locals said they don't want a tiger reserve because they know that they'll lose their rights if the tiger reserve comes up. So what the veterinarians in the forest department have done is they created these detention centers where they're capturing tigers and putting them in because they don't know what to do with them. They're just
Hmm,
tigers coming in from all over. So similarly, there are places in India where there is a lot of few cases of man eating. There's a lot of cattle hunting cases by tigers. So general rule is if it's a problem tiger, they capture it. They capture it the second time, then they put it in a zoo. Sometimes if a tiger is going on a rampage, they'll have to put it down. But the truth of the matter is, it is not a very good situation, and the way things are going, the future looks even more dark. It looks like a ticking time bomb waiting to burst, unless something really solid comes out. One of the things
hmm,
they're doing now is manual translocation of tigers. When they know a tiger's leaving the park too often, they capture the tiger and relocate it to a park which has less tigers. So that has started in a very small scale now, but hopefully that will be the mainstay of tiger conservation in the future. But at this point, if you ask me how we are managing it, I would say that we are just crossing the bridge every time we get to a bridge. We don't really have a plan.
Mm. And do you know how many people are killed by tigers in India each year?
Well, I'm not going to give that number. I want people to come see tigers in India. So no, but it is pretty bad. It is see going by the scale of India, it's not much, but if it's someone you know, it feels like a lot. So
Mm,
I I think the numbers would be close to about 80 to 100 people a year
mm.
on
Okay,
record.
so
On
significant.
record,
Hmm.
anything more, there could be more. I even
Hmm.
heard about recently a tigress who and her four cubs who killed 15 people in a village, and then they were
Wow.
captured. But the interesting thing is there was not even one news bulletin about it.
Hmm.
They kept it on a hush, hush, and a low. So I don't know.
Yeah.
The numbers could be far more, could be exaggerated, not sure, but
Mm.
there is conflict. And
Yeah.
there are specific areas where there is more conflict than other areas. So that's kind of how it is.
Mm. Why do you have to repopulate the existing forests with deer and game for tigers? What happened to the populations of those animals in those areas? And
Oh,
I guess a
yeah.
next question would be if you didn't, would that help cull the numbers of tigers?
Okay. I didn't understand the second part of the question. Can you repeat that?
If you didn't repopulate, if India did not repopulate those areas, would that naturally limit the number of tigers?
Absolutely. I'll answer the second part first. If tigers don't find new forests to move into, it will limit the number of tigers for sure. They will die one way or the other by other tigers, by hunger, by poisoning, in the human hand, by accidents, by in roads and highways and railway tracks. They will die for sure. I think we've not reached saturation yet, but in a lot of places, like I said, because our population is not evenly distributed across our forests, so we have very high density areas and poor density areas. So in the very high density areas, it is saturated. Like the parks NatHab visits in India, you have very good chances of seeing tigers only because the parks are saturated with tigers.
Hmm.
And at those parks can't have any more tigers. It is
Hmm.
definitely, and they had reached that stage almost 10 years ago. So we don't know what we're going to do with the excess tigers. And the truth of the matter is there are almost 20 tigers leaving the parks every year, the cubs which are old enough.
Hmm.
What happens to them, no one knows. And it's also bureaucracy because once a tiger leaves a park, it is not the care of the forest department or the wildlife department. It becomes someone else's problem. It maybe becomes a problem of the revenue department or the agricultural department or the railway department or the town uh, council or something because it becomes someone else's problem. So it's a lot of bureaucracy there. And to come to your first question, these forests, yes, are empty forests. They have been hunted out in the past, and they have not gotten due attention since then, even though they're technically protected because of lack of good management. Because India is still a bureaucracy governed system where the person in charge is more important than the system. So these
Mm.
forests have been neglected for the last 50 years. They are still forests. They're still good forest cover. There's still some prey, but is that enough to sustain a tiger population? No. So if you release tigers into these forests as it is, tigers will definitely go around seeking prey and they'll end up in a village and kill cattle. So that is not how repopulation is done. So you have to augment prey, you have to create the right habitats, you have to make sure there's a good prey base, and then bring in tigers, and that's
Hmm.
how there's going to be a future.
Mm. Did tigers once have other predators, or are
Well,
humans
other
really the only
tigers, and they
predators?
still do that.
Okay, so just other tigers.
There's been no other predator in India in modern history for tigers.
Hmm. Mm. Well, that is the last question we have today, so I'm going to turn it back to you for closing comments.
Well, so I think this is not something you hear about often when people talk about tigers. Everyone likes to glorify the conservation process. Everyone likes to talk about the beauty of tigers, and all of those things I'm not denying. It is all true, but it is also very important to be aware. of what a great conservation model can lead to if you don't think about every situation or permutation and combination in the future.
Mhm.
And I'll also like to say, having said all this, we still have are the country with the highest number of tigers in the world, and we look forward to having you to show some of them to you. Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to present to us. And I want to thank
My
everybody
pleasure.
who tuned in and everybody who submitted such interesting questions. Please join us again tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.